quickly and see how you guys feel, and then I'll back up my position with some statements later. When it comes to the head coaching job of the Philadelphia Eagles, and really I came to full terms with this personally last week. Prior to last week, I would not have said what I'm about to say. But last week's game, in particular, when you add it into a collection of evidence that has been going on over time, but also in and of itself on an island, I'm ready for the Philadelphia Eagles to have an alpha head coach again. And when I say alpha head coach again, I mean somebody that's going to come in and just feel like they're in control of everything, or just absolutely everything that a head coach can be in control of. And I'll leave it at that. And you guys just respond to that, please, and then I'll come back with some more thoughts later.
I agree. Alpha head coach for sure. I'll throw a monkey wrench into that because I just don't know if that's going to be able to be the case here in Philadelphia with a regime of Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, especially with Roseman always seeming to put his fantasy football manager cap into the mix and making decisions on personnel and game day decisions and stuff. But the short answer is yes. I agree that they need someone that's going to come in here and kind of just take charge. And I'm kind of over the Sirianni kind of. The in-game decisions are a whole thing. We can talk about that for an hour about just giving up free points and whether he's calling the plays or not at this point. I don't even know. I mean, he gave an answer like he called that 4th and 1 play last week, but he's probably just covering for Kellen Moore. I don't even know at this point what's true and what's not. But yeah, I would agree that I'm in the business for a new coach maybe middle of the season. We got to see how the couple of weeks here play out.
I agree. I am not really sure what positives Nick Sirianni brings to the football team anymore.
It's like that Office Space. Like, what do you do?
Precisely. The Bobs need to come into a team meeting and have a little talk with him. I'm good at dealing with the goddamn quarterback. Well, apparently you're not. Apparently he doesn't talk to Hurts any more than is absolutely necessary. That's Kellen's job. But calling 4th and 1 plays, I guess, is not Kellen's job. I don't know who's responsible for the 61-yard field goal try in the 4th quarter last week. We'll leave that to the Bobs. Here's the point. I also agree with what Mike said. You're not going to bring a Belichick, a Harbaugh, either one of the Harbaughs, in here, anybody like that, because of Howie and Jeffrey Lurie's involvement here. So you need a caretaker, and, ever since they fired Chip Kelly, you've got a Super Bowl, a runner-up, and several NFC East titles. You're probably one of the 4 or 5 most consistent franchises in the league. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. He's just no longer the right guy. So will it be Sirianni after this year? I say no. Will they bring in an alpha head coach? I also say no.
The only thing I would add to that is, Lurie's always had this fascination with the Patriot way and Belichick, and he's from Boston and all this. Maybe he gets back into a corner. The season goes spirals so out of control that he goes, listen, Howie, we're sending you back to that corner office and we're giving full control to Belichick. So I think that's going to happen. It depends how bad the season goes. There's a possibility, but that would have to be a conversation for an alpha coach to come in here, I think.
Yeah, I think they brought him back this year because they like having consistency throughout their, throughout the Lurie's time especially. They like having one head coach as long as possible. So I think that's why they didn't ditch Sirianni this year. If they win the division and win 1, maybe 2 playoff games, I could see him staying because I think winning will trump all, but it has to be really convincing winning. It can't be win 10 games at the start and collapse again. So yeah, I think if they go on a run, he'll stick around. If he's winning and the team likes him, I'm cool keeping him. But at the same time, I wouldn't say the offense does really well and the offense carries the team for a lot of stuff. We have Kellen Moore on roster. There's a chance he'd get hired somewhere else as a head coach. You don't want to start with a brand new offense every year. So, solution to that would be kick Sirianni out, bring in Kellen Moore. But then that just gets messy. It's a weird situation we put ourselves in. But yeah.
What's the litmus test or what's the barometer for? I'm asking you guys a question here.
Right.
for if he stays. I mean, I think they're going to win the division just because the Cowboys look a mess right now. They have injuries everywhere. The Commanders are a good young team. I actually like them. They could challenge for it, but I just don't. I don't think they're ready yet. So I think the Eagles are going to win the division by default. So then, what's the barometer then? Do you have to get to the NFC Championship? Do you have to get to the Super Bowl? Is one playoff win enough? Where do we draw the line in the sand?
You use the word default, and if that's what it ends up being, then that's all it is, right? I mean, default means to me, any one of us here, anybody inside the Great American Pub here in Narberth, anybody running by us on the streets here, could take over this team and you'd win the division, right? So what can he bring beyond that? I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, if you get hot and you're in the Super Bowl 4 months from now, you're not going to kick the guy to the curb. But I would think a repeat of last year is the end of him. Even a single playoff win, a 4-5 game or something like that, followed by a second round elimination, he's in serious danger. I think it needs to be obvious that he should stay, because right now it's obvious he needs to go.
I think I used to know what the barometer was in my own mind prior to last week, and that was as long as the players were playing for him, right? Nick's role, I guess, within the organization, at least to me, has just seemed undefined for some time. It's hit an exclamation point this season, but I feel like it's been undefined for some time. But my sense was that the players were still playing for him, and that was by and large based on the fact that they were winning the majority of their football games. However, with the way last season ended, and the way that slide really felt like it defined their entire season, now I'm unsure of what that barometer was for me. And even though I don't think it's entirely, or it might even be not from the majority standpoint, Nick Sirianni's fault, but the situation that we have here is a coach, I think, that has a really undefined role. Even in his own mind, he tries to explain it to us as fans and to the public and to the media from time to time, but that just makes it seem more confusing as to what his role is. Like it should be unsaid and understood that he can pop into the quarterback room, or pop into the offensive meetings, and things that he has characterized and talk with this person. That should be understood. The fact that he unfortunately feels the need to explain that he still does those things, in my mind, just gives me overall cause for concern of the overall situation that is probably just not overly his fault. I mean, the management system is established the way that it is. I think that with total podcast speculation here, that Howie is a little still shell shock of everything that went down with the Chip Kelly regime related to his actual role as a GM, and just from an organizational culture standpoint, that maybe he's hesitant to just bring somebody in who would not do what Chip Kelly did from a personnel standpoint and from a culture management standpoint, but just kind of come in and be the boss. I kind of have this feeling that he's just wanting to run his organization's management structure differently, and this is kind of what we have.
I think that Howie's validated to me.
Sure.
I mean, you kick Chip Kelly to the curb, and 2 years later, you're celebrating a win over the greatest coach-quarterback combination in history in the Super Bowl. If I'm Howie, I walk away right there. I pull that George Costanza, I can't do any better than this, and I'm out of here right now. But for now and forever, Howie's going to point to that as, I know what I'm doing, we're going to do it this way or the highway. It's why I don't think you get the Belichick, you get the Harbaugh, you get the, fill in the name of your alpha head coach here. I just don't think it worked. I don't know that Chip Kelly ever qualified as an alpha head coach, but he certainly wanted to be.
Sure. No, that's fair, and it's true. And you guys mentioned Belichick, and I should just get on the record and say any alpha coach except for Bill Belichick. Okay, that's why I made it a point in the show notes to say, and this is my unequivocal stance. Joe D's vote would be for a current NFL coach.
So like, who qualifies in today's NFL that's not Bill Belichick, or
right.
Obviously is not Andy Reid?
Right.
Either Harbaugh probably qualifies, but that ain't happening. Who else would it be? Tomlin? I I just feel like
Andy Reid.
Yeah, right. I feel like the coaching profession in general is going away from these. I'm going to stick around for a decade and rule the organization with an iron fist type of men.
Yeah, and I'm going to hedge a little bit because I'm not going to really. I mean, you mentioned Tomlin. I've always been a fan of his, so I would be certainly interested in that. Not suggesting that Pittsburgh is ready to let him walk or anything like that. But no, my feeling is just from the situation as a whole is kind of where I'm commenting from, and it just needs to be an alpha, not someone who's going to ruin a culture like Chip Kelly did, but just I feel like this culture that has been created. I mean, maybe it's better than the culture previously because they're winning more games, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's productive, going to be productive over the long term, and a lot of things come into play, I think, with how coaching, on-field decisions were being made during the Saints game. Like this was like kind of the eye-opener for me. I feel like Nick is possibly making decisions based on the fact that he wants to assert some kind of role, some kind of meaning. Like this is how I am impacting the game, and there's not a lot of scientific thought behind that, and I'm not any kind of football coach to be able to validate when it is okay and not okay to go for chip shot field goals and so forth. But when you think about some of the decisions that were made last week, passing up chip shot field goals, then bringing in your top one of the best kickers in the NFL to try a kick that's about a mile long, these just don't feel like they're decisions coming from somebody who's totally comfortable and thinking rationally in their job. And I don't necessarily think that is because he is a bozo or someone who got a job when he shouldn't have gotten a job. I just think it's an overall, I guess, culture kind of thing, organizational management kind of thing that is just concerning as a fan.
I think that the other thing we're maybe overlooking a little bit here is that was coming off a game that didn't exactly end with sterling decision-making either. The Monday Nighter with
Sure,
Atlanta.
absolutely.
So now you got 2 in a row.
Yeah, I was there. People were not happy in the stands.
The Packers game, I don't want to call it 50-50 because I felt like they were the better team, but it could have gone either way at the end there. So you got a team that maybe should be 3-0, but could have also been 0-3 and is probably right where they belong at 2-1. But I guess when I think about the next head coach, I think about, like, I watch a lot of college football, and I see at least a couple guys, namely Lincoln Riley at USC, and depending how the season turns out, Ryan Day at Ohio State, who have been talked about as head coaching candidates for a long time, could be looking to get into the league after this offseason. I feel like that might be more the direction these guys would go rather than, I mean, can we all agree that Sean Payton's been an unequivocal disaster in Denver?
Yeah.
You look at these guys, they're more McVay types, is what I'd say. The coaches who are getting into the league now, the Belichicks, the Andys, the Harbaughs, the Tomlins are the last of a generation. And I don't know that Jeffrey Lurie, who's, help me out here, 75, 76 years old probably, he's probably thinking about, how many more chances do I have at another Lombardi trophy? Does he try to start over with somebody who's in the same mindset like a Belichick? I don't know.
It's a lot to ask. It is. But I don't know. I hope that they're asking the question, and I hope that they are. If there's something they can do internally from a manager standpoint or organizational management standpoint to make things a little bit more cleaner, then that would be great. But yeah, I have concerns. So we didn't get to this yet, and I've been careful not to mention analytics. Right? I feel like a lot of the conversation has been, Nick Sirianni is just following analytics. Kind of like what you heard a lot with Gabe Kapler, and I think you kind of sort of hear about it with Rob Thompson. I think you hear about it more in baseball than football in general. But still, it's kind of been something that people are sensitive to. Just the general thought that a coach is sitting there with a tablet or a laptop and just plugging information into an algorithm and saying, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do because the computer told me." I have no problem with Nick Sirianni's overall aggressiveness on fourth down, which sometimes feels reckless. But last week was just too much all in one game. Like I'm trying to remember a game in which there were so many examples of that. And again, not just passing up field goals that are chip shots, not just then dragging your kicker in for a 60-yard, 50-some yard or whatever, a mile field goal attempt. In a game that you don't have A.J. Brown, and I know this isn't all on Nick Sirianni, but that's kind of part of the point. Like, it's hard to figure out what the heck is going on. But in a game where you don't have A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley doesn't get a rushing attempt in the first quarter. And I know, game script, the Eagles only had the ball so much. It was two possessions, one of which was stalled by an INT, right? And I guess a fumble, right? Am I remembering correctly? A fumble in the first quarter. But anyhow, they had two possessions, and Saquon did have a reception, but for him to not have any rushing attempts in the first quarter with how he's played thus far, and with the type of dynamic player that he is, and with A.J. Brown hurt, I just can't fathom it. And it's like, I feel like I can see one excuse and one excuse only for a quarter of football to go by and Saquon Barkley not have a rushing attempt.
Our coach sucks. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he'd have to be on the toilet. He would have to be on the toilet and not able to have a rushing attempt. So that's where I feel like all these things happening in 1 week, and I'm glad that they won the game. I think to a certain extent, if you were to project out whatever happens here, the more wins that they accumulate, I imagine the more we're going to have things be status quo. Because even if you lose in the playoffs in terrible fashion like the Eagles did last season, it's still a successful campaign from an ownership standpoint, from a general manager standpoint, from an organizational standpoint. I mean, there's plenty of teams out there, I'm sure, that would trade their current fate for, oh yeah, I'll make the playoffs a couple years in a row, but never, not make it to a Super Bowl, or maybe only make it past the first round once or twice. Like they are still incredibly successful. It's just kind of bonkers seeing that success come to fruition.
Yeah, and with Sirianni too, like, I used to think that he was a great game day coach as far as like clock management and fourth down decisions and stuff like that. Like, I like how he was aggressive and it usually worked out. I used to think he was really good at that, but then I realized, is he really, or did it just get 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and you do the brotherly shove or the tush push and and get the first down? Is like, was he really as good as it at it as I remember, or did he just have this play that no one could stop that just got him a lot of fourth down conversions, and that kind of skewed that perspective too? It's I'm trying to really think about because especially I think the last couple weeks were a result of him trying to compensate for power being stripped away from him by the front office, but yeah, so it's gotten me questioning what I used to perceive as a good game day decision from him. But
yeah, and overall, it's kind of a shame, to a certain extent. I feel like, as a fan, having these kind of remarks and even complaints, because the guy Nick Sirianni is dealing with a lot of change. I mean, Jason Kelsey's no longer here. He's got a new offensive coordinator and new defensive coordinator. I mean, he is having to deal with and embrace a lot of organizational change, things that typically come with some kind of grace period. And we've talked previously about how this is more from a survivor football conversation that has come up, but like the Eagles electing to not really push their starters in preseason. He's still feeling his way through. All the coaches are feeling, and the players are feeling their way through that aspect, impacting their early season performance. So it is kind of unfortunate, but here we are. So as people come into the pub here, we're getting ready to go to our first break. You guys have anything to add before we get the break? Did we cover everything, or any other outstanding thoughts, outlandish or otherwise?
When you said Saquon would be on the toilet, would that be a 1 or 2?
Well, that's now you're going to make me peel the onion on this in a way that I wasn't. I'm going to imagine that if he was padded up and then had to use the facilities, it's going to be a sit down occurrence either way. But yeah, I digress. Again, we're the Philly Sports Jabronis, our first time here at the Great American Pub in Narberth, and we're really excited to be here.